Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Secretary, welcome. It's good to have you back.
Nice to see you.
Back in April, Secretary Goldstein testified before our Oversight Committee, and one of the things he said is that as the chair of FSOC, that you would make it a top priority to make sure that the regulation process was well coordinated. And in fact, I think you said this morning that failure to coordinate rulemaking will be enormously expensive to the economy and create opportunities for regulatory arbitrage. So as the overseer of that process, what are you doing to go above and beyond to get these agencies to coordinate?
Well, under the law that the Congress passed, I was given the responsibility to try to coordinate, but not the authority to force it. So I'm doing what you would expect me to do, which is to try to get them together, encourage them to use the discretion they have to be more closely aligned, and make sure it's being sequenced in a sensible way, and make sure they're looking at the full scope of the things we're imposing on the system. Of course, the things we're imposing on the system has costs, and we're trying to make sure that it's done in a way that everybody knows what everybody else is doing. And as you can see, it's a challenge. But you did not give me the authority to compel them to work closely together, and they exist with independent statutes, independent mandates, and they're going to be protective of that. But where they have the flexibility under the law to be more aligned, they're moving closer to being aligned.
Yeah, because I think an example of that was brought up a while ago about the CFTC and the SEC, for particularly on derivatives, and in other words, business conduct standards and margin and capital requirements and clearing. There's obviously not coordination or mutual agreement on those, and obviously those are very important issues to the economy. And I think you make a good point, is that you we're not given the authority to compel these agencies. So is this a flawed process? And because as you say, this is maybe the most important thing that can happen here, and important to the economy. And if the process isn't going to work, and we're not going to have harmonization between this rulemaking, then what direction should we be going?
It's a dramatic improvement in the system we had before the law was passed. Dramatic improvement. They're working very closely together. They recognize, if you had them here with me, the people who run the CFTC, the SEC, and the Fed, they'd commit to the same basic objective because they recognize it's important. They have a very elaborate, closely coordinated process to try to make sure that they're doing this in a sensible sequence. And you're going to want to see, like we are, where they land the stuff, how closely they get to that stated commitment. But they're committed to it, and I think they're doing a reasonable job. It's a little messy to look at. I agree with that. And we just got to keep emphasizing.
If it's not working, or if it's what is the alternative here? I mean, should we elevate this to another level? I hate to bring another bureaucracy in there, but if do we need a referee here?
I don't
working group?
I don't think you're going to pass a law. You don't need another committee, that's for sure. You got enough committees. You're not going to pass a law that I don't think that gives me authority to tell them what to do, and I wouldn't seek that authority. So what we're doing is the best we can with the authority we have, and I think it is working. It's just not. We can't be certain yet it's going to work well enough. But I take a more optimistic view.
I think one of the things you said earlier, too, is you're worried about the cumulative burden of the regulations. I'm worried about the cumulative effect of all these regulations. Just the first 102 regulations that came out of Dodd-Frank, for example, according to the regulators themselves, will take 10.8 million hours of compliance. And we did a press conference not too long ago, and you may or may not know this, but you did a little stint in New York. They built the Empire State Building in 7 million man hours. And so this is just the first 102 rules. I mean, how are we not just suffocating the financial markets, and we've just begun?
I think you're too worried about the cumulative impact of these financial reforms on the basic business of finance in the United States. Now, we're not going to get it perfect. when you get it wrong, when they're too weak, they're poorly designed, there's huge gaps, we leave huge amount of stuff to operate in the shadows. We have a chance to fix that now. As I said, and I say this over and over again in public, as we fix it, we want to make sure we don't overdo it. And where we have to get tougher standards in place, like on capital over time, we're going to make sure they're phased in over time so we're not going to hurt the recovery. And I do not believe there is credible evidence to support the conclusion that the rules as they're now being designed are doing material damage to the basic objectives we seek, which is to create a more stable system. Now, they have consequences. They will raise costs of business for financial institutions. That is their objective in some ways, or that's the necessary outcome of that stuff. But we have to get the balance right, and we're being careful to do it.
I think that's the reason that coordination is extremely important, because not only are we seeing a lot of those regulations coming out by multiple agencies, but when we talk to people in the regulated community, they tell you that more coordination is needed. And so I would encourage you, Mr. Secretary, even though you may not be able to compel, but that you spend a tremendous amount of energy to make sure that process is moving along, because I think it's extremely important to the economy.
Well, thank you for emphasizing the importance of that, and I share your view about the importance, and I am spending more time than you can imagine.
Thank you. Mr. Schweiker.
I wasn't sure someone else